Time to rotate the wheels on this 2014 Toyota Prius. Tools that I'm going to be using: lug wrench, mostly to take off that outside wheel cover, lug wrench spinner to actually get the bolts off of it, a piece of wood to block the wheels so that they don't move. That one's actually under there because I need some height to get my jack underneath. A jack stand. This is a hydraulic jack stand to get it up. Then 2 jack stands to hold the vehicle in position, because you're never going to use the hydraulic jack to hold the car up while you're underneath it. And a pair of work gloves. You should also have a torque wrench. The torque wrench will verify that the lug nuts are on to the correct specifications, thus not too tight or too loose. First thing we do is block off the back wheel of the side that's not going up. Make sure to set the parking brakes. Use the OEM lug wrench to pop off the wheel covers. Put the wheel cover in a safe place and do the same to the other tire. Then break loose all the lug nuts while the car is still on the ground, going in a star pattern. The reason to loosen the lug nuts while the tire is on the ground is so that the tire doesn't try to spin while you're trying to torque the nuts loose. Then underneath the front of the car, we're going to locate our jack point, which is right here. This big piece of honking metal is where your hydraulic jack is going to come up and mate with and lift the car up. And as you see, it's right behind the front bumper. Maybe about, 16 inches. You can't miss it. We carefully roll the hydraulic jack, position it directly under the jack point, and start lifting. At some point, wheels will come off the ground. Then right behind the front tire, you'll see 2 dimples in the subframe, not the plastic, and that's where you're going to put your jack. I've decided to lift the car a little higher so that I can raise the jack stand for greater tire clearance. When you finally achieve the correct height, slowly release the hydraulic jack so the car settles on the jack stand. And of course, before we jack up the back, we block the driver's front wheel. In order to jack up the back end, we need to find that jack point. And it's underneath, of course, and about shoulder to fingertip reach, you'll find a big support bracket right there. And that's what you're going to put the jack stand underneath and lift up with. It's just in front of the springs. The axle is just beyond that. By the way, you should never use this axle to lift the vehicle, because you'll just end up damaging it. Just in front of the tire, you'll feel for that rail, and there are the 2 little bumps, and in the center is where the jack stand's going to go. So it'll line up like this, and make sure your release is always on your side so you're not reaching underneath. And we got maybe 1/2 inch clearance there, so what I'm going to do is lower the car down, and that should give me plenty of clearance for taking that tire off. With both wheels off the ground, we simply remove all the lug nuts, take that tire off, bring it here, Take the lug nuts off of that, take that tire off, put the back tire here, put the front tire back there. Now we proceed to remove all the lug nuts. Now I could use this and do this a whole bunch of times, and that'll work too. I just like the speed of this. You just spin it and it goes. And when taking these off, start pattern doesn't matter because you're not torquing down or torquing off. Lift up and out. This is also a great time just to check the disc, the rotor. You're looking for any unusual wear patterns, any heavy marks. And you're also going to take a look at your pads and see if they're thinning out. If you have any hydraulic leak on your struts. So those are things that can easily be done. If there's any brake fluid leaking out of the lines, if your boot has a tear in it. So these are all visuals, and whether or not you know how to fix any of that stuff, at least if you see it, you can go to your mechanic and get it dealt with. With the tire off, one of the nice things is you can inspect the tread for any damage. You know, maybe there's a nail. You see there's a little bit of gravel there. That's no big deal. But if there were a nail, then we'd have to deal with that. Or if there was a chunk missing, or if we had sidewall damage on the inside that we couldn't see from the exterior. These are all things that are worth looking for, as long as you have that tire off. Before mounting this wheel, just want you to know that these nuts have a washer. So make sure that the washer is attached to it before you go placing these on. There shouldn't be any missing washers. Okay, so now I look at the lugs. I see I have a lug just slightly to the right of dead center. So I'm going to grab my wheel and try to line it up so that when I lift in place, it slides in. Now I'm holding it in position with my knee, and I'm going to put my first lug nut in there. So I got one in. So now the wheels and tire is not going to fall off. So I push down and secure my bottom. And what I do is I just make them all finger tight. Again, star pattern doesn't matter at this point because we're not torquing. With all 5 of these in place, you can't really tighten them down. So I'm just going to make them snug. So that the wheel is in the right position. So these are not locked into place, they're just snug. And then once I get the car down, then I can torque these. We'll do the same thing. I'm not going to show you that because it's exactly like this, except it's that wheel over there. With the lug nuts attached to both tires and snug, it is time to jack up our car a little bit so that we can remove the jack stands. We see that the jack stand has cleared the frame of the car, so we're not going to stick our finger up in there. We'll just lift here and it'll drop down, and then we safely remove it out of the way. Now we can safely lower the hydraulic jack and bring the back wheel to the ground. We do the same to the front. We align the jack, and it's the same procedure, raising the car enough to clear the remaining jack stand. Once the jack stand is clear of the car, we simply hit the release and move it out of the way. Now we can safely lower the car back to the ground. To torque these down, and you should torque these down, you need 76 foot-pounds. So you'll need a torque wrench. The socket is 13/16. One important thing to know with torque wrench is they're for torquing, not for applying the lugs to the wheel. So it's just to get that final torque. So if you find yourself having to spin this on for any length of time, you heard that click? That means that's 76 pounds. I want to bang on it with this, but this is an instrument, so you don't do that. Well, that's embarrassing. So I got it off just using another wrench that holds on to it. The problem is the socket for this 1/2-inch driver is just way too thick to fit inside the lug wells. A 3/8 driver uses thinner sockets, and that's the solution. Got my Craftsman, which only goes up to 75, so we're only torquing to 75, 1 pound short. You heard that click, that means we're set. And we're set. And we're set. And you notice that I'm not pre-spinning the socket on. That's the longest, it was about a 1/4 turn that I had before it hit 75. So that's why you want to make sure that you snug them up with a lug wrench or something so that you're not using this as a socket wrench. This is really just a torque wrench. All right, so now we do the other wheel, and then we're going to repeat this whole procedure again for the other side of the car. But now you know how to do it. Congratulations. Before we put the wheel cover on, we're going to check air pressure, because on the Prius it's 35 on the front, 33 on the rear. Get a reliable air pressure gauge, and of course, some air. Once you have the proper air in all 4 tires, you might as well take care of the spare tire that's in the back, since you have to put your tools away anyway. Finally, put on the wheel cover, line it up with the valve. I press my knees up against it and kind of just punch it in. Sometimes it'll do that, where it'll pop out on one side and pop in on the other. So you got to make sure that you get it on all the spokes, because that's where it's going to line up if you get it over the valve. All that's left is to reset the tire pressure indicator. To reinitialize the tire pressure system, we need to push a button that's underneath, right there. It has a picture of a little tire and it says set on it. So you're going to push that, but before we push that, we have to turn on the car and just don't push down the brake pedal, just turn it on. So you turn on the car, you push the button, and you'll see that tire blinks 1, 2, 3 times. Then you can release the button and you're all set. It's been initialized. Now simply turn off the car. If you found this video useful or informative, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, please subscribe, and as always, thank you so very much for watching.